Hello and welcome everyone. This is Taco Movie Talks and we are doing a car cast as we're on our way to West Virginia for a haunted house tour in a penitentiary. I'm very excited. Dadman's here.
I'm here.
Are you very excited as well?
I am very excited.
So,
see my nipples.
I'm right here, and I can see them. It is an audio medium, but if I could describe them, I would describe them as diamonds in an ice storm.
Rock hard.
I felt like my explanation was
insufficient. Yes, I agree.
So, and you had to add to it, didn't you?
I did.
But, we've had lots of guests on this channel. Lots of long-term guests. Matthew, Ethan, Big Chungus, Guillermo, Horror Rev, and this is your third, I believe, episode, and I think we can suitably say
I'm the best.
That you're one of the regulars at this point.
You definitely say you've been a guest on this show.
If this was a deli, we would know what your order was by now. You wouldn't have to. You'd be.
Strange analogy, but okay, sure.
You would be the funny-looking guy that all the waitresses know to stay away from.
Yeah.
Kind of like the villain who is in the two movies that we're going to be covering.
Mm-hmm.
Wes Craven, the director of both, and Freddy Krueger, obviously the very charismatic antagonist in both of these. And how familiar are you with Wes Craven? And are you a fan of his work when you watch it?
Well, Nightmare on Elm Street is the original is very good. The sequels were not as good. For some of them were not that. Like the Dream Warrior.
I think, and that is, I believe, the third one, and that's kind of unanimously a favorite amongst the sequels from what I've seen.
Yeah, well, there was two. There was the Dream Warriors, and then I can't remember, but two of them had to do with people who would fight him in Dream World. Mm-hmm. So
I got you.
One was a person, and the other one was like a group of three.
Yeah, I kind of know the ones you're talking about, although I'm not super duper familiar with the sequels. This, if you would consider it a sequel, which I think you would kind of have to, because canonically it does fit in with all the other films. Although
the new Nightmare?
Yes.
That's a remake. Definitely a remake.
Okay. Well, would it be one of those ones? Because it's the first one exists as a film in it. So I don't know. It's almost like how some of the Halloween movies, they decide to, okay, this is after, almost like this new trilogy is like, we're only really taking place after the events of one, or, you know what I mean?
You mean like supposed to be later in real time?
Well, that it exists, and it kind of quantifies the events of the first one and makes it a reality. It's very complex to talk about because it is meta in that it is, the characters play the actors, but also in some places near the end specifically become the characters that they played in the original. Like Heather became Nancy, the dad became the dad again. It blended the lines between reality and...
Yeah. I actually didn't know that. I have seen it, I don't remember it in vivid detail. Because it was good. Well, I guess you go where you want to go and I'll hit your ride.
Scream, also a huge Wes Craven movie. And that whole franchise has really become kind of a thing of its own.
Absolutely, yeah, sure.
And I'm sure there's a lot of people who prefer Scream over maybe a lot of movies, but Nightmare on Elm Street specifically. But I have to say, and you know this, Dad, man, Freddy Krueger is my favorite slasher or horror movie villain of all time. And I think the look does a lot for it. I think having a mask that is actually supposed to be a face with scar tissue as the mask is just like a great idea, I think. Because it allows them to kind of express themselves. Is this for me? Do I need it? No. Anywho.
Doesn't hurt though.
You can see them make facial expressions.
Okay. Yeah.
As opposed to Michael Myers, Jason, Leatherface. Right.
Okay. That's a good point. I understand that. And the face wasn't too bad. It didn't like... You know, he's got like catchphrases, and it really becomes...
That becomes a big thing in the sequels.
Yeah.
But in the original, and I think in New Nightmare, it doesn't... It is so... Not subtle, but not overly used, that I think it actually benefits the character. And when it was at that percentage of usage...
Yeah.
That's when it was best, but it allowed it to stand out when he would say something like get over here, like call the women bitch, say stuff like that.
Yeah, but they weren't like really catchphrases. I mean, that was just his personality,
in
my opinion.
Yeah, he had
he was a despicable human being.
Yeah, exactly. He was a scumbag.
Right.
There's so many points in between these two, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but I do think that some of the directions they decided to go in New Nightmare was part of the pitfalls of it. But I will say, before we kind of get to maybe the criticisms of the 1994, what a lot of people really like, I will say cult classic,
yeah,
we have to kind of go into what made Freddy Krueger such a compelling character, and I think the inception of the idea itself is so brilliant that it just lended itself to being something that would catch on in the zeitgeist and become such a popular franchise.
You're not safe in your dreams. That
yes. So,
I agree with that, because in the first and some other ones even, just that idea that, you know, you can't stay awake forever.
Yeah.
And you felt you're vulnerable in what's normally your most safest haven, which is in your house, asleep in your bedroom. But, you know, you're not.
You're not. And it's like with the other slashers of the time period, they would kind of chase you. And inevitably you would fall, you would get tripped up.
Yeah.
And even if they weren't running after you, if they were walking after you, they would eventually catch up to you. But this is much more, I don't know if metaphorical works, but
they were in your mind.
Exactly. You couldn't
He controlled the nightmare.
Yeah. And the only way, I guess, to outrun him, well, no, it's the same sense that you would have to eventually face the villain to win, which is also what occurred in this movie. But I'm sure you're vaguely familiar with the kind of the idea behind it. And that is, I think it was in Asia, smaller countries. It could have been like the Philippines, it could have been Vietnam, somewhere like that. Malaysia maybe. There was this, they thought it was like a sleep disease where teenagers were dying in their sleep. And in very invariably, this kind of led to these folk tales kind of going around, people trying to come up with explanations for the unexplainable.
Dying in your sleep.
Yeah, exactly. And that is, like, if that were to happen in any small town, any state, it would probably resonate with everyone. And it's almost to the point where the fact that there isn't an explanation for it, that's what makes it so scary.
Yeah. There, another common phenomenon or a fear is clowns. And I don't know if you had ever read about this, but there was a spate or I don't know, just many occasions of people dressing as clowns in cities.
Yeah.
And that went for years and years, different cities around the world, and they were like trying to be sinister or scary,
and that's a somewhat recent occurrence too, where I know on college campuses, I think Penn State was one, there was clowns dressing up trying to intimidate people.
I did not know that. I mean, this goes way back into the 50s.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's been something that's been propagated, I guess, and still, even now, people do it.
So there's some type of attachment, from a sociological point of view, about clowns and I mean, I think it's a common fear of many people. People are afraid of clowns, and that's. Maybe.
So are you kind of connecting that to Freddy in the sense that he has a sense of humor?
No. Just that, like what you were talking about, it like a phenomenon of.
Oh, okay.
The people having some, these, dying in their sleep and being some sinister force within, people's nightmares. That, and I went off subject there a little bit.
That's okay. I mean, you're multitasking. This is the car cast. Dad Man's the wheel man.
I'm the wheel man.
He's
the wing man.
Yeah, maybe we could do like a Top Gun type thing. You want to switch up our nicknames now?
To Goose.
I'll be...
You're Goose. That's who you are if you're wingman.
Can I be Shrimp Taco for this episode?
Jeez, I don't know. I don't like doing favors, as you well know. But
you want to be Big Cheese, maybe?
I'm Maverick. Or Iceman. I think Iceman would have the coolest nickname. So
Cheese Iceman.
Yeah, that's not...
Got it. So...
Something smelling in this car? I don't mean you. I don't mean that. It's something.
Well, let me tell you this. I was listening to Wes Craven. He was interviewing. I can't remember the name of the interviewer, but anywho, he was talking about how he got the idea for Freddy and I guess kind of how he should be performed or illustrated.
Okay. I've never heard of this, so I'd like to hear that.
So he was a small kid. He grew up in a city, I think New York, possibly, even though he doesn't really have a New York accent, but a city nonetheless. He was on the second floor of a building, and he was just kind of looking out the window early in the morning, and he saw like a drunk guy kind of going back to his house like early in the morning. So it'd been a very late night for this guy, and the guy kind of noticed that Wes was watching him through the window, and he just stands there and stares at him.
Okay.
And, when they made eye contact, Wes Craven, and he kind of gave him like a sinister look. And Wes like kind of jumped away from the window. I guess the guy had like a very striking look. Counted down. He's like, until he's like, okay, this guy has to be gone now.
Yeah.
He went back, and the guy is just there, and they freaking are staring at each other once again. This guy goes around the corner, and then like starts making his way to his house. And I guess Wes had an older brother who was like 10 years older than him, and he was like we'll say like 8 to 10 at this time.
Okay.
Got his, whatever, I guess probably 8 would make more sense. 18-year-old brother says this guy is like at our doorstep. His brother gets a bat and just runs this guy off. But he said that solidified the idea of a character who took pleasure in scaring children, but also kind of removing the innocence from children. Well, that might be a bit too far. Scaring is kind of what it is, but to think that, I don't know, as a child, to make the revelation that people are just kind of sinister and they take humor in scaring kids for no good reason.
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, and you're right, because, as an 8-year-old kid, you just, at least at the time when he was growing up, they never really expect people to be mean to them, or they would want to harm them or anything, and then this happens. So they stare at each other, and that's, whatever. And then he goes back after a period of time when he's still there.
Uh-huh.
So
and also going to the door, I think, is where it became.
Yeah. Then it goes from just, simply menacing to outright wanting to harm him.
Yeah.
So that is a loss of innocence, I think, because you realize it's like there's evil people in the world. That's an evil person.
And it could go to your doorstep.
Oh, yeah, right.
I guess that's where...
Metaphorically and physically, or in actuality.
Yeah. And I think that's why he had the idea, like, that the facials had to be there for Freddy. There could be scar tissue to make him look, like, striking and iconic in a way, because that face and hat is instantly recognizable, right?
Yeah, but and the sweater.
And the sweater. I think the sweater also came from that gentleman. I don't think it was red and green originally. He did red and green because those two colors obviously go together, but they also, I think he said something about how light sources go and that those two particular colors were important, or there was some
colors of Christmas. I don't think that had anything to do with it, but I think that I don't know what they contrast most probably of any other. No, he couldn't have done yellow. That would have been odd, stupid. Yes. Red is a menacing color. And then, so maybe from the red he said, well, green is the most...
That it goes with...
Contrasting.
Yeah. I thought that was like a really interesting piece, and I think because the man's face stood out to him, he wanted to have the histrionics for the Freddy Krueger character.
Yeah.
And then I think, and as we're kind of going into the first movie, and I'm going to contrast this once we go into the next one, because there was some decisions that I think kind of were counterintuitive to what was just intensely effective in the first one, to where the backstory of Freddy Krueger is one of the most perfect backstories, I think, in all of horror villains.
Yeah.
To have him be to kind of avenge the sins of the parents. Which is, I mean, that's an old kind of premise, where it's like this sins of our fathers literally is
yeah.
And that predates this, if I'm right.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's just like...
I think that's from the Bible.
I thought so too, but I didn't want to sound
stupid.
Yeah. So that on its own is awesome. For his disfigurement to kind of tie into them burning him because he had been a child killer fits in really, really well.
Well, he was a molester
in the remake.
Okay, you're right.
Because I thought that would be it, but as when I watched it again, I guess he killed 20 children in this one.
Okay.
And So the little, I don't even know if you want to call it a plot hole or whatever, but they were like, yeah, they didn't sign the warrant, so he got off free. That's why they had to kind of do vigilante justice.
Yeah.
With the remake, I do think that him being a molester, it is more suitable, because that's more likely for someone to maybe get off as opposed to murder. I don't think if you don't sign a search warrant, you'd be able to walk free, even momentarily. I kind of think it's like, okay, look.
It would be very, very unusual. I guess it technically could happen. Because, like, what it would do is it would invalidate all the evidence that they captured.
In the home, right?
Yeah.
But, I don't know. I just feel like with 20 murders, there would have to be more evidence.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, we don't need any of that.
Yeah. No, we know it's you. Now we know to go after you, so we're just gonna get your fingerprints or whatever. I think in '84 they had fingerprints, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, that, even in the '70s, right? So, but I think it's forgivable in the scope of things, because
that's he's 20 is just so many.
That's a lot. I think. But
and for the kids not to know about that,
that would be a town thing where it's like,
for 100 years.
Yes. I mean, there would be like
that would be what the town, the only thing that the town is known for.
Yeah.
And in the movie, like the kid's like, what are you talking about? I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like Nancy sees the hat and she's like, "Who's Fred Krueger?" It's like, I mean, yeah, you would know that.
Yeah.
But I mean,
there was the nursery rhyme.
That might be the one thing that they are kind of tangentially know of him, but not know the whole thing.
It's Freddy Krueger killed 20 kids in this town.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. But it doesn't. I have such an affinity for this that even those plot holes, I won't even say minor. I won't qualify them.
I mean, 20's a lot. I mean, that's like.
I mean, you're like
on
a big
the Mount Rushmore of child killers too.
Yeah.
Not just serial killers.
That's what we call a heavy hitter.
Yeah.
He would be Babe Ruth of
Ted Bundy, beyond Ted Bundy.
I think Bundy did more. But
oh yeah, he did. He definitely did more, but they weren't children.
Except for the last one.
Not the last one. One of the last ones. It was in Florida. He killed that little girl. She was like 14 or 15.
Yeah.
And then he went on the rampage at
Florida State.
Florida State, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
which were completely different than
completely motivated to only kill children, and obviously it's something in their psychopathy that lends them to.
When he killed, what I'm saying is, like, when he killed prior to being in Florida, they were contrived. When he was in Florida, he just went berserk.
Yeah.
I mean, he just like rampaged into a female dorm room and like used a club. When he killed them,
it's a very thick branch.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it was a log. Yeah.
Yeah. Different names for different things, eh?
Absolutely.
But because he was more spaced out, but I think he had been in prison so long that
the rage just overcame him.
And that could kind of tie into what Freddy is, because it's like, it is more serialized, I guess, the way he killed them, even though it was very, very short time spans in between. But I mean, like, days, if like a day, mostly. I mean, it was kind of like each night, just taking someone off. Yeah. One thing I have to say, the kills in this were some of the most well executed I've seen in any film. Friday the 13th has some pretty darn good ones.
See, I think Friday the 13th are cheap. That when you say slasher film, Freddy's, in my opinion, especially the first nightmare, is not a slasher film. Friday the 13th, from the very beginning, is a slasher film. Okay?
So you think it's a bona fide horror film?
Well, I mean, for sure. It's just, it fits the definition of, and a slasher film, in my opinion, is a lower quality
I got
type
you.
of horror film.
I got you. I guess the kills were more or less to kind of exemplify how horrific this villain is, I guess.
Yeah, I remember there was the one on the bed where the blood just
With Johnny
vomited.
Depp?
Yeah.
Yeah, Johnny Depp has, in my mind, and I have not seen all of the sequels, but the most iconic death of the bunch.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's... Not only did he win the Amber Heard trial, but he has the most iconic death.
Yeah.
So, I mean, things are going pretty well.
I'm not
for him.
I mean, I don't dislike Johnny Depp at all. But it's off the subject completely. I'm glad he won that trial. She sounded like a lunatic.
Are your windows up? All of them? And the back one's up? There we
Now
go.
we are.
Okay.
You might want to look at that.
So... Okay. They're going to meet us at the place as opposed to...
Okay.
We'll get something to eat. And all the fans
do have
get to...
food.
They,
They do have food.
okay.
Not a lot, but it's jerky and cheese and
Hopefully the
crackers.
people listening are hungry.
I hope so.
Because if not, you're
They're
going to be
share.
down. But that kill was amazing. And the first one that we see, the girlfriend, just freaking really, really gripping.
Yeah.
And how they made it all happen, I think they literally had rooms that they could rotate.
I've known they've done that before. And the boyfriend, you remember, he was in the room, right?
Rod, yeah.
He's just an unlikable guy. I mean, he was supposed to be
Yeah.
the guy from the other side of the tracks.
Yeah.
And Johnny Depp was the preppy,
Which is
innocent-
so funny because I think if you were to ask, like, Johnny Depp, I feel like maybe later in his career would have been able to do that a lot, like, pretty well. Play that Rod type character. Well, I don't
He
know.
was in something called 21 Jump Street. And that's actually how he kind of became
the big movie star.
the beginning of it anyway. And he played a very likable. I mean, I'm a guy, but he was like really good looking,
He was the it girl.
Yeah. he
But
was
guy.
a good girl. Yeah, for sure. I mean, like Brad Pitt, Johnny Depp, a few guys fit that.
Tom Brady, pretty boy.
Well, yeah, he's a football player, but okay.
Rafael Nadal.
Okay, no more tennis players or sports figures.
But his death, the girlfriend's death, pretty great. Even Rod's death, it was very inventive. And I think another thing that was so cool is that they were kind of able to portray them from the perspective of someone not in a dream, where it was like an invisible force, a la Invisible Man, where it was like people were just levitating. Something is
so there's like the dream world and the actual world coexisting.
Yes. So it worked whenever you could see Freddy actually.
And they'd go back and forth.
Yeah, I loved that. And also how I think the more formalized introduction, because we do see him in, I think, the first girl to, or maybe it was Nancy's dream, but then when her friend is kind of like being chased through the back streets of her neighborhood, you see Freddy like extend his arms.
Yeah, I like that. I remember that. That was to me. That was when the first time I watched it. Very terrifying. And another part. There was two parts in that movie that really. And the other one was when the main character
Nancy
sees her friend in a body bag, kind of flopping.
Oh yes.
Through the school.
Mm-hmm. That was
She's
really
talking to her and
striking.
stuff. Yeah.
And then when she kind of just gets dragged away by an invisible force, that was like so well done.
Yeah.
And there's another scene where I think she's in a body bag and it's unzipped this time. And I think I said this the last time we discussed. We were talking about Hellraiser. But it was like it was a Virgin Mary motif, I think, is what it looked like to me, and whether that's what Wes Craven was going for or not, it struck a chord with me because it was like kind of muddying the waters for these who's borderline sacrilegious.
Right. So they put in sometimes like religious iconography. Like Jeanette words, so I gave you an opportunity to say that. And I think you're probably right.
And I'll go.
That makes it more extreme.
Yes.
To do that.
And obviously there was the crosses, the nursery rhyme about that you grab your crucifix. There was physical crucifixes in the film, and you might be kind of surprised to hear
5-6
this.
grab your crucifix.
Yeah. You might be surprised to hear this, but it's like Wes Craven. He grew up in a very Baptist home, and he went to a
New York?
family.
Yeah.
And he went to a Baptist college. So he didn't see his first film until he was a senior in college.
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
And something that I've kind of picked up through discussions with people who know a lot about other directors, Pier Paolo Pasolini and Ingmar Bergman, like religion is, because of the way they grew up or because of how their life has gone, it becomes a very big piece of their filmography.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. In that age group,
For that to be a big thing.
Sure. I mean, this is an example. I mean, we're a much more secular society than we used to be. Like when those guys grew up, even when I grew up, and they're a little bit older than me. A lot of probably went to Catholic school. And it's very, very strict.
Mm-hmm.
Nuns are very strict. The doctrine is very strict. You do not commit sins, and you have to go to mass and so forth. So, I mean, it's a big part of their
upbringing and their kind of culture almost.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of their...
Kind of part of the fabric that makes them who they are.
Well, yeah, because it's in your childhood. It's those are they call them the formative years, and so, and then as an adult, you grew up with that. That was just fact. That was, this is truth. Mm-hmm. Your religious understanding, but then they see it as adults and they see it differently. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, they would be making
religious films,
yes.
Yeah, it's like to be able to take a step backwards from it, mm-hmm. kind of allows them to
see that. And obviously, it's not a religious film, it might be on Elm Street, so mm-hmm. I could see some and if you saw it, I mean, it was probably,
well,
they wouldn't be accidental.
Yeah.
They would know. Someone would say as they're looking through that they do what they call the dailies, a daily filming. It's like, well, that's the Virgin Mary. Like could be confusing, but they're like, no, it was intentional.
It was almost subversive in that it took these religious themes. Well, it's not. It just accents the film. It's not maybe the major focus of it, but in what they try to kind of take a step further in the next film we're going to talk about, he is almost a demonic force, Freddy. And I think he's
supernatural.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you could say obviously because he was demonic in life,
Yeah.
and now his evil was such that he even in death he cannot be vanquished.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's like they say violent ends generally can lead to like a ghost.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is like his whole MO and his end was so violent that it kind of transcended the bounds of what human nature is, and he was able to become a force that existed outside of our realm and exist within nightmares, because that's almost a portal. Like dreams are kind of like a portal to another
dimension.
Yeah. So
that's well said. I like the way you said that.
The whole tie-in and that whole kind of idea, I do think is very brilliant, and this film just seems so inspired. It's so creative that it's one of my favorite horror movies. It's I think it's just outside the top 20, maybe in my top 25, but it was one that I kind of clicked with from a young age, and it's always been one that I've had huge sentimental value.
Yeah.
I will say, I do think even if I try to look at it from a more unbiased perspective, I still think it's one of the classics.
Yeah, for sure it's a classic. I would only say, if you wanted it to be, because a lot of it was very well done, and like I've always said, like horror movies generally aren't financed as well, and they're not as the production values. I think all that was good. That was good. But, and you may not agree with this. There's a lot of different ways to have played Freddy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, I don't know, I guess he was sinister enough. You just went pure malice in that character.
Maybe more Pinhead-esque, where it's like just uber serious.
Yeah, I guess he was serious enough, I guess, in that movie. Obviously he changed over the sequels and stuff, so I can't really, although that, that's probably why I think that
it taints your memory of the character, that the majority of his film time he does play someone who is more catchphrase-esque.
Which, I think that was a thing in the 80s. Like, the Arnold Schwarzenegger movies and so forth. I don't know why they thought that was such a
necessary.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that sold movies or something. I don't know, but it's so cliche-ish that it's
I think
it diminishes.
The fan outcry is what led to that, because after this movie, I think a lot of people wrote fan mail clamoring about Freddy, and he there's certain catchphrases in this. There's a few that maybe stand out. One, when he cuts his fingers off and he says, "I am God." That one. But that was intense.
That was intense. I agree.
And it wasn't welcome to prime time, like what you would see in a sequel.
Yeah, I don't even consider I don't consider that a catchphrase. I don't.
It's just powerful dialogue.
Yes. Because when you're a demon and you are a god or the god, you mean I am all powerful. Mm-hmm. I decide if and when you die and how you die.
And this is my domain.
Yes.
That is.
I'm inescapable. I'm inevitable.
Like Thanos.
Yeah. Did he say I'm inevitable or something?
Yeah.
Like that? All right. There was a movie or a line in the movie where the mother's talking to Nancy about, when she's explaining who Freddy Krueger is. I don't know why. It's not that big a deal. I always liked the line, though. She said what happened. She said, well, the lawyer got fat and the judge got famous, and in the end, a document wasn't signed and Freddy went free or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was like very kind of like old-timey-esque.
Yeah.
Those not even turn of phrases, just those phrases. You don't really hear them, but it's kind of...
Well, at that time, though.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, it is kind of crazy. You can see
it was a good way to kind of explain it where it wasn't explained and maybe done poorly, you know.
Yeah. You get the point.
Yeah, you get the point, and it's impactful. You know, 'cause it's probably because sometimes when you're brief, brevity is the soul of wit. So, you know, a very kind of short encapsulation of what happened.
A concisive way to just, this is what happened.
Right.
And because I think the reality of the situation was like just that. It was like, look, these things shouldn't happen, but it did.
Right. And you know, it's like, you know, there was dirt everywhere. The lawyer, you know, when you say he got fat, I mean, he just got paid.
Yeah.
So and the judge got fat. I mean, so it was like their motives were not pure at all. They were, you know, one for money, one for fame. And
justice was never...
Right. You know, and 20 kids, you know, were not...
justified.
There's no there's no justice for them.
I mean,
so, which led to it being and then what they did obviously was even, you know, well, they're like, yeah, this isn't going to go. This isn't going to happen. He is going to pay for this.
Mm-hmm. I think that's something that they explore that more in the New Nightmare, but it goes enough into it where it's like the fear for your children and to see them in peril and to be upset by it, but also like trying to make it right any way you can. Where you thought you've dealt with it and now its ugly head reemerges.
Right, yeah.
There's so many themes about this that just work in a horror movie.
Yeah, the plot was very, you know, that's something, you know, I shouldn't take for granted, is the plot was good. It was a good plot. It makes it all makes sense, you know? Mm-hmm. And even though, you know, like poetic justice would say, oh, or he got killed and that's the end and that's how it should have been. That's not what happened. He comes back. You know what I mean? Because he's an evil force. And even though everybody would agree they did the right thing, that's what makes it perverse. Yes. And non-contrived, you know what I mean? Because the thing that should happen is the fact that they killed him. Mm-hmm. And under any way that he could have died would not have been brutal or cruel enough. And he did die that way in fire. Mm-hmm. And so for him to come back is, like I said, perverse. You know, it's and that creates a very good conflict and a very good plot.
And just one more thing that I kind of want to go into. It's like the lore and the, I guess, accessories. I love the glove. You know, Jason has his machete. Michael Myers has his kitchen knife. The glove, it's just so... It gives you insight to the character that this was like... He got creative with it. It wasn't just like cut and dry. It was literally like he did take pleasure.
Which movie? There was one of either the sequels or the New Nightmare. I think it was the New Nightmare where they went into that, the building, like where that came from. Do you remember from? You don't remember from either.
The start of A Nightmare on Elm Street actually shows Freddy crafting the glove and showing him literally making it.
Okay, there is another one where his father, because it alludes to the fact that his father was
abusive.
Yeah, abusive and you know, a horrible person as well. But he had some kind of, and he was abusive to the mother. But he had this kind of fascination, and he had built several of these types of gloves.
Okay, see, I was not familiar with that, but I think that works because it gives you a kind of a look into the mind of someone who's just so diabolical, who's truly evil. Where it's a craft.
Yes, and yeah, he is because he creates a very vicious weapon, and it's for. I mean, he murders. He's a murderer. And he murders children, and I think that's a more like they say stabbings are personal. This is more personal. It's just an extension of your hand.
Yeah. You're not even holding it. Yeah.
Right.
It's like when you use a pencil, there's kind of some separation, but when you finger paint, it's like you're there.
Right.
And also the boiler room, which just kind of ties into the way that he was murdered. It feels, there's fire.
Yeah.
And, there's that heat, which kind of lends itself to him also being like a hellish creation.
Or, demon. Right.
So, I mean...
I remember, I'm sorry, when he cut off his fingers and said, "I am God," that was another horrific, scary fucking movie.
Yeah. I want to get your final thoughts and your rating, but first I'm just going to say I gave it a 4 out of 5 or an 8 out of 10. There's ones I've rated higher that are horror, but sentimentally this one is, one of the most sentimental, I guess.
I'll give it a 4 too. I mean, and it's different for you than it is for me. You saw it as a child. I saw it as an adult, and to me, it's a good, it's from the 80s. It really isn't dated that. I mean, you could watch it now, and it's like, because some movies you watch that are dated, it's like, this is stupid. It's just, it's too, just too dated, and it doesn't have the same impact. But this, I think, I consider it a classic in that it doesn't, it's somewhat timeless. And I'd give it a 4 out of 5, 8 out of 10 as well, because very original plot, not derivative in any way really that I can think of. I mean, I'm not a complete expert on the entire genre, but I think it's I agree with you on the rating.
And it's fresh on my mind because I've watched it recently. In the way that you said it's timeless, I mean, it's in the 80s. Yeah, I mean the style of the kids.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. You're watching a movie. At the time it was contemporary, but now it's just it was a movie about the 80s. It happened to be made in the 80s, but to you, it's just a movie about the 80s. Its setting is the 80s. Because there's other movies that go back in time.
Yeah.
It, for instance.
Yes.
And it folds up. The makeup's good, more, good enough. Special effects, pretty good. So, yeah.
And one of the things that I wanted to kind of, as far as the time period, the graininess to the footage, I almost feel works in its favor, a la Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I've just seen that, so that kind of sticks in my mind. But
yeah, the rawness.
Yeah, it feels grittier. Yeah. It feels darker. It has like a bit of an edge. It almost like, should I be watching this now? Because we're so used to things just being crystal clear.
Right.
That
high def, everything's.
Yeah.
And it's just like, there were several, I'm talking about Texas Chainsaw now, versions of that.
And I just watched the sequel last night to that. And I do feel like that feels a bit more dated. And it almost leans into it being in the 80s a little bit. And I feel like that tracks from it. Did you see the one
with, that girl's married to Justin Timberlake? Jessica Biel.
Oh, yeah.
Jessica Biel.
I haven't. I haven't. The remake,
That is
presuming.
good. That's good.
Okay.
He's the guy that's named Leo Army, I think his name, or something like that. The guy that was in Full Metal Jacket.
Oh
Girls
yeah,
Sergeant.
no, I did see that.
Okay, he's the sheriff, and he's at this. I mean, all the people make your skin crawl. You know, because I mean, they're just depraved human beings, and he's a sheriff.
Yes.
And he's like is corrupt. You know, he does not. You know, he's not about justice. He's about, I'm a cop. I can screw you over anytime I want, and I will.
Yeah.
Just because
because he's linked to them, correct?
He's part of the family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He kind of takes the part of the gas station attendant in the first one, who happens to be the dad.
Yeah.
In the original. And I have to and I'm gonna get more into this. I have a video planned to go real in depth with this, but that first one, it just freaking hits the landing so well.
Yeah.
But it just stuck in my mind because I actually I thought, you know, the follow-up movie, which for us is New Nightmare,
Yeah.
the different direction that it went into, and this one is just, it's a lot more similar, right? And it almost tries to kind of hit on the story beats of the original while referencing the original, and just give it like that, a little bit of the edge to be able to tell the story again.
Yeah.
And use some creative liberties to get to that point. But there's a lot of things lacking in this one that I felt worked in the original.
Yeah, I don't know if the mood was created. I mean, there's a little bit of like the kids don't think that they were abused, but then they find out.
So this is one. Are you thinking of the reboot?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, is that a different movie?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, you've probably seen this one because I know I've seen it a bunch. This is one Wes Craven literally plays himself in it. Robert Englund plays himself in it.
Oh, I've seen part of that. Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So in this one, like Freddy, he gets he looks very, very similar, but he kind of gets a new look, and he almost looks like a supervillain in it, as opposed to like an
Scarred
actual
and
damage. To kind of steal a quote from your favorite movie, Suicide Squad, where you love Jared Leto's tattoo where it says damaged on his forehead, because it lets you know that he's a damaged person.
Yeah.
And that's your favorite movie.
No, it isn't.
This one,
You have that stupid habit of doing that. Proceed.
Wes Craven is writing a script to bring back Freddy after he died in the sequels. And it feels like he's kind of attempting to bring it back to its roots. And he also he feels like Freddy he is a demonic character who was kind of tamed by being portrayed as in a movie. It almost like encapsulated him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but the fact that the movies are now over, he's now bridging the gap to reality again because he's not captured in the films.
Okay.
Which is, it's a little bit convoluted, but also creative. There's that fine line. I kind of feel like it straddles it.
Yeah.
But I have to be somewhat critical of it because I felt like the entity that Freddy embodied in the first one is so perfect that you kind of mess with the special sauce by let's title it something else.
To do a movie like that, it's a capstone movie, right? It's supposed to be to kind of
bookend it very well.
Yeah, right. And if it's not great, you're just you're just going for the money. And there's nothing, obviously, well, you know.
I don't
mind. I mean, that's why you make movies, but it has to be compelling, or, you know, it's like just another freaking sequel, man.
Yeah.
You know?
I do feel like there was enough creative juices there for it to not be a complete cash grab, whereas maybe some of its predecessors could have been labeled as such. They
definitely were.
Yeah. This one, like, I liked how it was like they're literally playing out the screenplay that Wes Craven had. And I also like how like reality and the movie intertwined at some point. Because everyone from the original, Rod comes back, although he's just literally a cameo. He has no lines. But Nancy, the main girl, the final girl.
Looking glass, or looking... I don't know why I remember her name.
Something that sounds like that. Yeah, like Letting Go or something like that.
Yeah. I was going to say Lovelace, but I know that's not it. That's another famous actress from Deep Throat, Linda Lovelace.
Yeah, I thought that was it.
Every guy from the 70s knows that name.
So, it's interesting in that. There was enough creativity to it where I'm not, like, rolling my eyes.
I saw part of it. You know, I hate, you know, obviously I watched the wrong movie, but I remember that, and I think I watched part of it, and I wasn't, like, enthralled.
Yeah. There were some cool scenes that I just kind of want to mention. There was one where Nancy went into the casket, and I thought that was super cool, where like the bottom of the casket almost became like a realm, to where it was like an entrance way to like the depths of hell.
Okay.
Where you didn't actually get there, but it was like literally just like the entrance, where it like just seemed like this is the door of a portal.
Right.
You know, and Freddy was dragging her son down.
Yeah.
But this, you get more of the perspective because, you know, the main character is Nancy again, but also her son is maybe the central protagonist as well. Maybe he's like 1B protagonist, right?
Gotcha.
But her wanting to protect him gives a really neat kind of element to it that you get in the original, but it's not the central focus, where you want to kind of watch out and not want your children to have fears or be scared.
Yeah, and that's a primal fear, is nightmares. And one of the things as a parent, you realize that your children have nightmares. You always try to help them through that. So that's a primal fear. So that's another element just of the series itself that, you know.
It's like now I'm not just looking out for myself.
Yes, right. You empathize with your children. Maybe more than that. You sympathize. Mm-hmm. You don't want your children to be hurt, and one of the things that you can't protect them from is a nightmare.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you can protect them from a lot of things, but nightmare is not one of them.
Yeah. And another like really cool kind of little wrinkle that they add to it is that it's like horror films can very much inspire nightmares in children, right? And she's an actress, a horror actress.
Yeah.
And she has a child, and he's getting to the age where now he's old enough to see it and understand and be scared by it.
Yeah.
And that's something that she has to kind of juggle with because it's like,
I mean, I don't want him to be afraid, but he knows what I do, and you know, mommy's an actress and she's in scary movies, and I know he would be afraid of these. And I'm gonna interject something here real quick before I forget. And I saw it today, and it's not any of the movies. It's called Pray for the Devil, which is a possession film, and I just want to bring it up because I'm definitely planning on watching it coming out the 28th.
Okay.
It's about a nun, but she's got a gift. So anyway, I can't say I recommend it, but I definitely want to see it.
Something on the radar.
Yeah.
Another one, it has come out, and I'm not sure if you've seen any of its predecessors, but it's Terrifier 2.
I'm not, no.
Oh boy, get good reviews so far. It's out in theaters now. I mean, if there was one movie I would see this Halloween season, Hellraiser was one that I was excited to see. Did it live up to expectations? Maybe just barely.
Yeah.
But that one seems to be exceeding expectations. The original is just freaking grotesque in how far it takes the violence. It's I think it's like, one of the horror icons that is coming out of the 2020s. So it's pretty neat to see. It's a clown character, which obviously, as you were going into, works. It's scary for a lot of people. And just a sinister clown is something that's just deeply rooted for whatever reason for a lot of people.
Yeah.
That's one that in All Hallows Eve is the inception of this character, which is Art the Clown. So if there's two movies to watch, I would definitely check those two out. And then
I'm not aware of it. I would like to see that. It sounds good.
Yeah, I think you'd very much like it. And
what is Terrifier, the original? What time spent, or when did it come out?
that one came out, I think in the 2010s. I think All Hallows Eve was like maybe 2004, 2006, like mid 2000s. And I think Terrifier was like 2012.
Okay, all right, so more recent. All right, I never heard of All Hallows. No, are you saying that movie's good, or there's a sequel to it or something?
That is the introduction to it. That one's pretty good. Terrifier is more like, it just like, I think All Hallows Eve has more elements to it than just Art the Clown, but Terrifier is like just his solo film.
Okay, all right.
And I could be misremembering that, but fans of it below, obviously, chime in, because, could be wrong on that. But it's really, really good, and it's it fits right in with, like, the Freddy Krueger type films, like the solid ones, right? And apparently the sequel really is a great entry into that series, but for New Nightmare, the script and like how they were able to tie in the themes, bringing Freddy back, was really good, but for some reason it just felt like it lost its bite. And I think it's maybe because they had jumped the shark. It's like it's hard to recapture something once it gets watered down.
Yeah.
It's hard to distill something once you've milked it.
Right.
And maybe...
Odd metaphor, but yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think farmers might listen to that metaphor and be like, that's...
Maybe understand that.
Yeah. But... And they kind of pay homage to that solid kill of Nancy's friend from the original in the babysitter's death in this one, where she's kind of getting dragged across the ceiling. And that was really cool. I'm glad they did that again. But there wasn't many... Like, that, I think, is the only on-screen kill that we get. And, and they do, like, it seems like it's supposed to play into the plot, but Robert Englund seems to be, like, almost having a calling from this demonic force, this old demonic force, where the film almost seems to be a little bit inspired by it, in that it's like this thing that's as old as man, or it's just so old that we've lived with it in different forms, but it's attacking us now as this form.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So in that way, it did feel like, it's such an original idea. And even this, the way to bring it back is creative, but it's kind of it's borrowing from, more iconic horror.
Okay.
And another criticism is it felt like a film that kind of used, I don't know if CGI, but like...
Not well.
Yeah. It didn't seem like it was prepared to do so.
Wasn't there yet.
Yeah, like there was like some explosions that they did that was clearly CGI.
Thank you, sir.
There was a scene where they were on a freeway, like the famous freeway, and was it the 509 or 309 in Los Angeles?
It's a 5.
509.
No, it's a 5. Like I-5.
I-5. Okay.
There may be another one, but I'm pretty sure that's the main one.
Yeah, and the traffic around them at times is real, but at other times isn't. You can tell when it is and isn't.
Yeah.
And like that takes you out of it. Just a wee tidbit, as I like to say.
Right. That imaginary word you use all the time.
Yeah.
Dad, a tidbit.
And they did a Hansel and Gretel kind of tie-in. That was like, okay. I guess that ties into like this being something that's very, very old. This type of evil.
Well, like a true like powerful evil or demonic evil would be an old evil.
Yeah.
And the older you make it, the more sinister it seems.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like an element of or a force of nature type.
Yeah.
Evil.
So I mean that is interesting, and they really, at the end, it's like they almost get brought to this like demonic lair, and it has like the deadly sins on blocks in the walls. So, that is cool, and it really leans heavy into, Freddy being a demonic force. But I just kind of liked the whole essence that this man was human and transcended it because of the nature of his crimes and the end that he gets to. So to kind of retcon that and say, well, this was encapsulated by this character we created, but now exists because that ended. I just felt like you kind of scratched out something that was brilliant about the original.
Yeah, I mean, you can only work it so long.
I agree. I
would think you would have to. I mean, I guess that maybe the concept wasn't bad, but if it wants to be, we call it a bookstone or
capstone
or capstone. Something to, this is the final resolution, final reckoning, whatever. It's got to be pretty good, and it's got to be pretty profound, and I don't.
Let me just spin you one maybe premise that wouldn't necessarily be a capstone, but maybe a way to give longevity or a breath of fresh air. Would be maybe like Robert Englund's character. They do this meta thing, and he is maybe, I don't know if possessed, but like he's kind of tapped into this darker nature within him to play this role.
Yeah.
And not being able to have an outlet for it, because this is based on the premise that, okay, the series is over, right? But we're doing one last go.
Mm-hmm.
It would work from that sense that it's like Robert Englund becomes he plays an evil version of himself.
Well, and that happens in real life. That happened to Richard Dreyfuss. Are you familiar with that actor? He was in Jaws. He was the
Is he the guy with not the sunglasses?
He was
big
the
glasses?
scientist. The scientist with the curly
dark
hair.
He has a doll, black as a doll's eyes. Is that him?
No, that's Robert Shaw. Anyway, he was in another movie where he played an invalid, and he got into the character so much that he was like suicidal.
Oh wow.
And talking about Robert Shaw, someone, he's the character in that movie, in my opinion. But anyway, in order to doing the part, he started smoking, and then he turned into like a real hardcore smoker and died of lung disease. So I mean, I'm talking about like a character like overtaking, your psyche and personality. So I mean, maybe that's kind of the theme or part of the theme of Robert Englund in that movie. Which
I was proposing an idea.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. So that has credence, though. I mean, it's happened somewhat in real life, and other, another movie was called Angel Heart. It had Robert De Niro in it. He played Satan, and it was weird because his name was Louis Cypher, which is Lucifer. It didn't dawn on me, like, and then he's Louis Cypher, and they said, like, when they made that movie, that he's a method actor, so he becomes the role. And they said that he was creeping people out. He would lurk around and just, and it's like, people like, I don't want to be around him, because he's just too
much.
Yeah, I literally think he's going to kill me or something. So that's, kind of what you're saying, where the role consumes you, and, that would have been a good way to go. Like I said, I only saw part of it, unfortunately, but a good way to go with that, especially for him. I don't know if he would have had to have been the lead character for that or not, but anyway.
So, obviously, you've made it this far, and this is the wrong time to bring it up, but if you do like listening, it's on Spotify. You can check it out there. And next week, Dad Man, we have Halloween. Is the episode's basically going to come out on Halloween. I think we're going to be recording on Halloween. We're near it. Very, very close to it. So Halloween 1, Halloween 2. John Carpenter.
2 is horrible.
We can watch 3 if you want, because that one's kind of...
Season of the Witch.
That one's its own thing, yeah?
Yeah. Although it's not great. It's about a cable company.
Well,
shows a particular type of movie that makes kids.
That one is
kind of a cool ending.
That one's Carpenter as well. Am I correct?
I would think.
I think
he owns the.
But I don't know if he did 2.
2 is a slasher film, basically.
Okay.
It's cheap. It's not like necessarily cheap. It's all in a hospital, and it's like right after
1.
Yeah, where she's taken to a hospital, and he comes to the hospital, and somebody gets a needle in the eye. I do remember that, but it's not.
Whoa, spoiler.
Well, I mean,
I'm kidding.
But, either these people have seen it by now, or So we can discuss whatever. I would say people should. What do you call it? Like sign on or
log on?
No,
lodge, subscribe.
Subscribe, because nobody does this kind of movie analysis like me and Taco say.
I mean, that's a plead from a dad. So,
but it's good. I mean, I have really good insight, and you're an excellent host, and
the hostess with the mostest.
Toot our own horns, but toot toot.
Well, I think if they've listened this far, I feel like they're
hooked. They're gone. Forget it.
You're gonna like and subscribe, even comment.
And you got to tell your friends, because your friends are missing out, and they don't know as much about movies as you do. And if you want to talk to them, you got to listen for the insight. Otherwise, You're going to be all by yourself with all this insight and nobody to talk to about it. So that's not good.
Yeah, before we end this because this was just something. There's something to getting to kind of flesh out your ideas from movies and just get to that push and pull.
Right.
That
more comes out. I mean, you do better analysis when you discuss it,
as opposed to just
having
solo.
it in your head. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just kind of thinking about it. As a matter of fact, here's something weird. I mean, this is about Space Odyssey, and I was talking to them about talking to someone about the movie, and it kind of dawned on me a part of.
Might have been me, as we were talking about that last week.
Yeah, but I had spoken to this woman, and I figured out that the monolith that the ape saw and learned to use tools. It was a bone, but he used it as a weapon or whatever. So the new monolith gave creation to the Star Child, which was the next evolution of man.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why I never really thought about that, but it dawned on me when I was discussing it with somebody, and then we talked about it. And we probably talked about it last week too. But I mean, had I not been talking about it, I never would have came upon that realization. So
that's what I think is great, getting to record this, and I think that's also what is cool about getting to listen to it, is that you get to think about what you thought and also get two other people's perspectives,
Right. Yeah.
There's a lot to it where you might have your perspective on a movie.
And you hear ours, you compare and contrast. And,
yeah, exactly. And, I think a lot of people, you can easily get caught up in the emotion of being a huge fan of something or just hating something, right?
Right.
But I think a lot of people they really don't have that unless they really do have deep fandom to something. And getting other analysis of movies you haven't seen, directors you haven't seen, or films maybe you saw a while ago, it opens you up to get an appreciation or maybe see what didn't work, and which will maybe make you appreciate films that do nail it.
And sometimes you see a movie, it's it didn't work, but you're like, if they'd done this. And that's the way I always felt about Hellraiser, and I go on and on about that movie, but that they had an opportunity. And the first one, I think, kind of got it, but there was so much more they could have done. They created a very compelling universe. But, you're listening to us, and you think, well, I agree with that, I don't agree with that. But then it makes it, maybe when you look at movies, you look at them differently, and you're thinking, I didn't like it, but had they done this, they missed an opportunity here. There's something else they could have done with this, or I did like it. They nailed it, like you said.
Yeah. So that is all from us. Dead Man, do you wanna give a closeout?
Wish you'd warned me. Could have come up with some clever thing. I would just say, if you don't watch, I'm not saying you'll die from cancer, but I'm not saying you won't. So.
Well, that's all from us.
I thought it'd do say something cheerful. There you go.
Well, I think that'll cheer people up.
Oh, absolutely. Sure, why not?
And we will catch you
on the flippity flip.
Flippity floop. Bye, y'all.